Need to be turned on.
That'll help.
You'd like. There you go.
Okay, we're in business. And this is on? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Wyatt Shields. I'm the city manager for the City of Falls Church, and welcome to our first of two town hall meetings that we'll have on the proposed FY24 budget. I will take some time, about 20 minutes, to go through a number of slides to present information on the budget, and then we want to open it up both to people in the room, but also people participating virtually to ask questions, to provide suggestions or commentary on the development of the budget. Before we get started, I want to just note we do have a good number of our city council here in the room. And Mayor Tarter, I don't know if you'd like to make any welcoming remarks also, just to kick things off.
Sure. Well, thank you, Wyatt. I'm Dave Tarter, the mayor of City Falls Church, and I'm delighted to be with you today, both virtually and remotely for the folks who are joining us on the internet. As Wyatt alluded to, we've got city council members here. Mary Beth Conley, who's chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, is with us. David Snyder as well. And I believe I saw Phil Duncan remotely on the internet. There he is. And I'm not sure we've got anybody else, but that's the majority of us. And we're very interested to hear what you all have to say, your thoughts, your comments to our budget. This is the start of budget season. City Council just heard, I think, Monday for the first time, the full city manager's budget and also the school's budget. So there is more work to be done. We certainly want to hear your input, your thoughts, your concerns, your questions. And there will be ample opportunity, not just today, but further along the pike to speak with council and other members to get information and convey your concerns or your thoughts. But again, thank you for coming out. We really want to hear what you have to say and look forward to today's presentation. Thank you, Wyatt.
Thank you, Mayor Tarter. Before we get started, I will just note for those who are participating either in the room or remotely, Susan Finarelli is here and she'll help moderate any questions or comments that people have. So if you're participating online, Susan, do you want to provide any instructions?
Sorry about that feedback, everyone. If you're on Teams and you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand in Teams or type it into the chat and we will call on you. And then if you're here, feel free to go up to that podium that has the mic and we'll certainly be happy to hear your comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. And we are taping this, and this will be available on the city's website for people to view at a later time. That's why we're using the microphones, and of course, so people participating virtually can hear us as well. So, what we will discuss today is some of the organizing principles and themes of the budget. As I think people can feel and sense in the city, this is a period of growth that is happening in the city. We see it in the construction activity that's happening, both on the private side, but also on the public side. We have obtained a lot of grants that we're using to improve our infrastructure. And you'll see, I think we're all feeling that construction activity in the city right now. So the budget does grapple with that, both to meet the opportunities that come with that growth, but also fund some of try to address some of the challenges that come with that growth as well. So we'll talk about that in the budget. And all of this growth really is driven by a vision that's been developed over the years with the city council and with the community working together towards a vision for how we'll grow together. We'll discuss some of the tax rates and fees that are in the budget, and we'll provide a schedule for public input before the council takes final action on the budget on May 8th. So first, just an overview of the numbers of the budget. And so the bottom line in terms of the total expenditures, we're proposing a 4.9% increase in the overall city budget. The city budget would be $118 million, which is inclusive of both the school share of the budget as well as general government services. So both general government and schools will be growing about 5.25%. We do have a number of fee-supported initiatives that we'll discuss in a few slides. Those are growing. We have pay-as-you-go capital, which is also a growing component of the budget. And debt service, we're not issuing any new debt last year or this year or the year after. We've taken on a lot of debt to fund the high school and City Hall improvements in the library. And we're trying to do our capital program without additional debt service. So we do have a small decrease in debt service just through the normal amortization of that. Capital reserves, we get revenue from the lease up at the West Falls project that goes into capital reserves. And then we use those capital reserves to pay a portion of the debt service for the high school, but then also to meet other capital needs in the city. So growing with vision. What we try to do in this budget is uphold excellent local government services. We're trying to sustain our city schools and meet the excellence and award-winning city school programs that we have. The CIP is very ambitious and transformative for the city. We'll talk about that. And advancing the community priorities that are in the City Council's 2-year adopted work plan, as well as the top priorities in a comprehensive plan. And do all of that with responsible financial management and meeting our financial policy. One of the top priorities in the budget is investing in our workforce. All of the initiatives and all of the things we're trying to do in the city are not possible without a dedicated and without a high-performing culture in our workforce of dedicated employees. And there are so many important intangibles in terms of having a high-performing culture. And we're working very hard on those. But competitive compensation is a baseline need for our workforce as well. So the budget calls for a 6% merit increase for employees, and for the police between the COLA and the STEP program for our law enforcement, that also comes to a 6% increase. The budget also has an increase in professional training and learning and development for our workforce as well. Growing with vision means growing together, and the council has made a priority to have equity be a driving part of our policies in the city, including our budget. The budget provides $120,000 for the Affordable Housing Fund, including the expansion of a rental subsidies to help people in our ADU program who are at 40% AMI, 40 to 30% AMI. Emergency food and rent assistance, additional help for our community service funds, which funds nonprofits that do important work in our community, and using CDBG funds, federal funds, for the maintenance of the 5 quadplexes that the city has acquired in the Virginia Village area. Growing with vision means growing green. And one of the big initiatives that's underway right now is the development of a community energy plan. We'll have a town hall meeting on this on April 20th coming up. Andy Young is leading our city effort to develop those energy transition plans so we convert off of fossil fuels and towards more sustainable energy sources to power the city. The CIP has really important provisions in it and the environmental front, including investments in flood mitigation. Some of these heavy rain events are coming about due to a changing climate, and so some of this is resilience against that, but also investments in green infrastructure in the stormwater area. We're working to convert our fleet to lower energy usage, including electric vehicles, and we have some grants to help us with that. Sanitary sewer backflow reduction, also in the capital improvements program, to get inflow and infiltration stormwater out of the sanitary sewer system, because when it gets in there, that's where it causes backflows in people's basement or overflows into streams. We're working towards rooftop solar arrays on public facilities. We've put that in as a placeholder in the CIP to give us a leg up as we're going out for federal grants to help with that. Our school system, this summer, we'll be installing solar arrays up at Meridian High School. Growing with vision means growing safely. So some of the key things in the budget in the area of public safety include an additional school resource officer. We currently have 1, so we would increase that to 2. We funded that this year with a grant, and we build that into the budget to sustain that in the next year. For critical mental health response for our city police. And this is a rising, this is a national concern, but also locally. We're having more cases with people having mental health crisis and calling 911, using some of our local resources in the Aurora House with clinical mental health support for our police officers to engage with the public in a way that will be safe and promote better outcomes. We are expanding camera traffic enforcement. So we're proposing to add an additional intersection for photo red and also for the first time to install traffic speed enforcement on Broad Street using camera technology. In the area of building safety, with all the cranes that you see in the city, we did make a major step last year to increase our staffing to make sure that construction is happening per code and safely. But we add in this budget a right-of-way inspector and a fire inspector to build up our capacity in building safety in those two critical areas. We're making investments in cybersecurity for our IT operations, and we are responsible for the fire station, and we have capital investments in the fire station as well. That's in contract in partnership with Arlington County. Growing with vision means growing more bikeable and walkable. The 6-year capital improvements program has $93 million in transportation improvements that we've been successful in going out with our regional partners and our state and federal partners to bring transportation dollars, most of which are geared towards walkability improvements at key intersections and other facilities throughout the city. In our operating budget, we have $167K for new sidewalks. That sustains the effort we've been making for the last 2 years, and $200,000 to support the neighborhood traffic calming program. The budget funds a key initiative of the City Council asking for support in the Public Works Department when we get people contacting us about safety concerns in our neighborhood, to have a team that can respond to those with either bollards out on the street to tighten down intersections or make other kind of more important solutions for traffic calming in neighborhoods. Currently, we rely on grants or contractors to do that work, and it's slow. It takes a long time to get that done. And so this budget would build up our local capacity to respond to those needs. We also invest in our core infrastructure for paving, traffic signals, and sidewalk maintenance. It's a key thing to have in the budget. So growing with, let's see here. There we go. Oh. So growing with vision means supporting the economy and growing the economy, and we're doing that in a couple of different ways. With this budget, we do have a grant to promote the city for tourism. There's a lot of grant dollars that are available to local governments at the current time because of bills that were recently passed in Congress. So we're asking for an additional grant administrator to help manage that money and also get additional money to meet critical needs. We sustain our downtown beautification using a portion of the hotel tax for our flower baskets, banners, and other things that we, tree lighting and things like that we do in the downtown area. And we do need to purchase additional sanitary sewer capacity from Fairfax County using developer connection fees is what pays for that, and that's in the capital improvements program. Growing with vision means preserving our small town character even as we grow, and some of the investments in the budget in that area include increasing hours for our library. The budget proposes a 2-hour increase from 54 to 56 hours, basically 2 additional hours on the weekend. The library board presented a couple of different options that they developed with Jenny Carroll, our library director. And so there are contingency funds in the council in the budget for the council to work through some of those options, possibly expand library hours further, but also fund some of our special events. Danny Schlitt just announced yesterday that we will be bringing fireworks back to Meridian High School for the Independence Day celebrations this year. So with the construction complete up there, we can do that safely again. We have significant investments in our parks. The Fellows Park improvements, that's in the CIP, as well as other improvements for play equipment and things like that across city parks across the city. So in the operating budget, this is sort of a breakdown of the new spending that's proposed in the general government side. And as you can see from this list, that employee compensation is a top priority and a major part of what we're trying to accomplish with this budget to help our workforce meet rising costs, but also to deal with a very competitive labor market that all employers are confronting right now, and taking care of our workforce in that environment. And then going through the list, these are all the items that we just discussed and some of the dollars associated with them. I mentioned the capital improvements program, and just kind of rolling all the numbers up into a summary, it's a $154 million capital plan over the 6-year planning period. We'll do a deeper dive on the CIP on Monday night at work session with the City Council. But as I mentioned, $93 million for transportation, $25 million for facilities, fleet, and park. And that does include a new front entrance to the Oak Street School, which we're working with the state government right now for some state funding to help pay for that project. The General Assembly has not yet passed that budget, so we're kind of on watching that with great interest to see that budget gets adopted hopefully this spring. That will help pay for that. And then $12 million in the stormwater fund. Just to note, that's the stormwater task force identified 6 top priority flood mitigation projects. Those are under construction right now. Some of them are, and then some of them will be constructed over the next year and a half. Those are funded in the CIP. The lion's share of our CIP funding is coming from grant. The debt finance portion, we do have one piece of debt financing in the sanitary sewer fund for FY24 to purchase that additional capacity of sewage treatment capacity from Fairfax County. The rest of the debt is in the out years of the CIP. So tax rates in the proposed budget, there's no change to the real estate tax rate of $1.23. The City Council has lowered the tax rate by 12.5 cents over the past 2 years, but this budget proposes no change in the rates. On the vehicle tax, kind of the bottom line is we're proposing a number that would result in a decrease in what people are paying in their vehicle tax relative to last year. Now, last year was a spike up in vehicle valuations, so we'll decline from that spike up. But we do propose an increase in the rate of 50 cents. And just to explain that, last year the City Council cut that rate by 70 cents. Now we're kind of adding some of those cents back in. Really, we're just trying to deal with that anomalous peak in valuations that came due to supply chain disruptions and as we emerged from the pandemic. On the real estate side, overall assessments are growing 5.5%. Residential growth is at 3.6%, and commercial is where we're seeing some of the strongest increases in valuation with a market growth of 6.6% and new construction of 4%, to a total of 10.6% growth in the commercial valuations in the city. This year, total assessed value of real estate in the city is $5.4 billion. Now, what does this mean for the median homeowner tax bill? The bar part of this chart is the tax rates, and that's the 12.5 cent reduction that I just mentioned down to $1.23. But the median bill has been going up because assessed values have been going up, and so this year's budget with no change to the tax rate would be about 3.5% increase for the median homeowner in the city, or $364. The median home value in the city is now $923,000, and that has been growing very strongly, particularly in the past 3 years. The last 2 slides, I'll just note on the sanitary sewer fund, we are asking for a 3% increase in our sewer rates, and that is really just to handle some of the cost inflation that we're experiencing. That's a $15 increase for the average homeowner, can vary based on your usage. And then on the stormwater fund, we're asking for a 4% increase, also driven by inflation on the cost side, and that would be about an $11 increase for your average homeowner in the city. So some key dates coming up. The City Council will have a work session next week on the CIP. We'll have our first public hearing on the budget ordinances on April 10th. A second public hearing on April 24th, our second town hall meeting on April 26th, and that'll be an evening meeting at 7:30 p.m. That's a Wednesday, April 26th at 7:30 p.m. And then on May 8th, the City Council is scheduled to take final public hearing and final consideration of the budget ordinance. So ways that people can find out information about the budget. The budget book is about 300 pages long, and it does have a tremendous amount of information, department by department, of what we're trying to get accomplished in the budget. That's available on the city's website. The capital improvements program is also available. For any comments that you might have, or questions or suggestions, you can send those in to us at budget@fallschurchva.gov. So with that, I will open the floor for questions, comments, and really appreciate everybody taking time on a beautiful spring day to tune in and pay attention to the budget process. It's one of the most powerful levers for change that we have in the city. So the City Council wants as much comment as possible on it.
Absolutely. The one question we have is about the speed cameras and the location of them. They're asking if it's just the one spot on Broad by St. James Church and School.
So that is what we are proposing. The General Assembly has allowed for the first time in the state's history for speed enforcement by camera, but only in school zone. And so we did a study of the various different school zones in the city, and where we have a pattern of speeding behavior was on Broad Street there at St. James, and so that's where we're proposing to put a camera. It would be a camera to address both eastbound and westbound traffic on Broad Street. And our goal is to modify driver behavior. Our goal is not to issue citations, and we hope that we'll improve safety with this measure. Yes.
There we
Thank
go. Hello. So I noticed on the summary of new spending with employee compensation, there are quite a few vacancies in City Hall. Does that line item include potential salaries for hiring and filling all the potential vacancies that we have?
It does. So the way we budget is we do budget on the assumption that we will fill all of our vacancies. We are working very hard to fill those right now, and but that is the budget construct that we operate under, is that all positions are filled.
We do have someone online who would like to ask a question. Aaron, if you would like to unmute yourself and go ahead and speak, and I'll put you up on the screen as well. Darn, we can't hear you. Hang on one moment. Let me troubleshoot this, because we should be able to hear you. Sophie, any ideas? I apologize. Hang on one moment. Our wonderful Sophie is working on the issue. Okay. Ms. Flynn, could you say something just to test it?
Sure.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Hear you now.
Great. So I was going to say my question also has to do with the city staffing. I didn't see where the vacancies may be reflected, but I guess I'm just interested, with the fiscal year 2023 adopted numbers and the fiscal year 2024 proposed numbers, understanding where in fiscal year 2023 there may have been vacancies to sort of get a better sense of where certain offices or departments may have been short-staffed versus understaffed. And I guess, to take one example, like the urban forestry arborist's office showed as fiscal year 2022 as having 5 people, dropping down to fiscal year 2023 with 4 people, and then maintaining 4 people in fiscal year 2024. And I know the arborist, despite his best efforts, has had difficulty kind of staying abreast of kind of all the requests that are coming in, and that the program has been, aspects of the program have had to be put on pause. And so in fiscal year 2023, for example, were there vacancies within the 4 FTEs in the urban forestry office, or was urban forestry fully staffed, but it's, still only staying at 4 for fiscal year 2024. So just if you can kind of give some insight into where the vacancies have been, to help kind of understand the position summaries that are included in the full budget document, on pages 12 and 13 of the budget overview.
And it's something where we watch very closely. Our HR department puts out a monthly report on vacancies, and about a month ago, we were about 15% vacancy, or 35 vacancies across the city. We have made some really important hires since then, so I think this month's report will be slightly better than the last month's. With respect to your specific question about urban forestry, we still do have 1 vacancy in urban forestry, and that is one of our crew member position. We did have a unmet need or a budget request to restore the position, to bring us back to 5 in that function. And we were not able to fund that in this year's, or at any rate, it's not in the proposed budget. So we would stay at that level of 4. So that's 3 in the field, and then the city arborist that's both kind of in the field and working out of the office. In terms of trends across the city, it is pretty widespread. So Public Works, our operations division, that is one area where we've had really since COVID, we've been understaffed in that area. I think right now we're about 30% understaffed in our DPW operations. So that's our people out on the street fixing anything that might be going wrong out on the street, or helping us with or to do all the leaf pickup in the wintertime. So that's one area we've been working very hard to try to address compensation and try to have attention to get that area fully staffed. In our police department, we went down at one point during the pandemic. We were about 25% understaffed in our police department. We're currently almost fully staffed. So that's been an area of success where we're almost back to full staffing in law enforcement. That's been a challenge nationally, and so we're pleased with our progress in that area. Across the city, I will say that I've given a couple summaries, but it's the vacancy issue I don't think is really concentrated in certain areas. It is something that's across the city in almost every operation that we have. We have some open vacancies. We did just recently hire a transportation engineer. That was a vacancy that we had for about 8 months, and we're very pleased to have that capacity in our public works. That's a really important position for traffic calming, for some of the safety issues that residents bring to us, as well as just all of the maintenance of the core infrastructure in the city. So we're very pleased to have that vacancy filled.
And just as a follow-up on that, where the vacancies are, that HR report isn't public in terms of sort of being able to provide, meaningful public input on, if DPW is down 30% and it's getting, 6 additional FTEs, then the public, with the both filling the vacancies and increasing that by 6 full-time employees may expect a big sort of bump in the delivery of services in the next year or so. But I guess, to better understand where we both may see the vacancies filled plus the additional personnel and sort of the impact of that additional hiring, is it at all possible to, even though it's a snapshot, to kind of provide that vacancies list in the context of the budget discussion?
Yes, I will provide that to the city council at the next work session, what the vacancy
Great.
list is right now. Then that will be a public document. For the public, though, kind of the easiest way to see it in live time at any time is to go to the city's employment webpage, and all of our current vacancies are listed there.
Great, thank you.
Hi there, thanks. John Ward, city resident, 335 Riley Street. First of all, thanks very much for all of your work on this. I know it's a huge amount of work every year you all have to go through. I want to comment briefly on one item. I haven't had a chance to I've just scanned through the documentation that was made public, and it's a fairly small item, but I noticed it in the CIP planning, the rooftop solar plans for the city, and the city has expressed an interest in a goal of being an environmental sustainability leader, both regionally and also from the government point of view, leading for our citizens and leading by example. It's interesting that the FY24, there's several years of solar rooftop planning for the buildings. The FY24 is only $88,000, which it's less than the CIP. It's not forced to be in the CIP. It could possibly be in the revenue general operating fund, I guess, because it's below the 150,000. And I would recommend that council and staff look at trying to move that into this general revenue, since the solar panels will pay for themselves in 10 or 11 years. They have a lifetime of 25 to 30. And so they will replenish whatever funds we put into them now, and it will continue to pay back. You did call them out as it's a placeholder, and for looking for federal grants. And I would be interested, as we go through, I know the CIP presentation will be later within the week or so, where the federal grants might be coming from, at least for the next couple of years. Seems like the Republican Congress and on the House side has really pushed back on the community grants being environmental. I know we put in a $1.5 million grant application to fix some lights at Hillwood and Roosevelt, but we're shying away from energy and environmental sort of things because there's just been some congressional guidance may not get that. But I really would question whether there's really grant money out there federally that will fund this. It doesn't look like there will be. I think the big thing we were given was the tax credit, or in this case, a rebate from the IRS for the municipalities of 30%. So that's really the main thing. I don't think there's going to be too much in block grants or some of the other green bank funding that might be available. So I'd like to be, at some point over the next couple of weeks, be talking about that a little bit. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. I think those are all excellent comments. I would like to invite Cindy Mester maybe to respond to some of the specific questions. Cindy is our staff lead on putting the CIP together and is working very closely with Andy Young on that specific part of the CIP. One thing I will note just in general, the city, I think in terms of sustainable generation of our energy sources, one way we can do it is by purchasing RECs through Dominion Power, which we have been doing. But in terms of that visible impact and also just being a contributor to generating electricity from sustainable sources, that's what's driving the desire to have PV at our facilities. It will lower costs over time as well. There's a payback, a business case side of it as well. But Ms. Mester, in terms of where we think we would be able to go to get grants or any of the other questions that Mr. Ward asked?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Ward. One sort of CIP clarification piece is a project of 150,000 is not per year, it's for the full 6 years. So in this case, it does qualify for a CIP, and because it's facility related, and it gives a lot of visibility, that's why it's in the CIP. The proposal that's in the CIP does work and look at those tax credit rebates. And so it is not a true grant, but it is a way to leverage funding to help pay for it. And it was just a prioritization, and all the complexity of CIP is the way it's currently positioned. There is a fair amount of grant money out there, either from the IRA or the jobs. The IRA is the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of them are not are formula based, and those will give us some challenges because they flow to the state. And then, as you know, Mr. Ward and Mr. Young's looking at those real carefully. We probably don't qualify for much. So we're looking at what discretionary grants are out there that we may pursue. So the CIP is always a good document to placehold the wants and need of the community so we can go for the funding, because most of the funders want to know, is it consistent with comp plan and adopted budget? So that's sort of where we are right now in our research, and definitely will continue to work on it.
Susan, any other hands raised online?
No, we don't have any other comments in the chat or hands raised. I
Okay.
think we're set there.
All right. Well, I will want to thank everybody again for participating in this town hall meeting. We will have our first public hearing on the budget will be on April 10th. And so welcome everybody to that. And then again on April 24th, and then working towards adoption of the budget on May 8th. The new budget goes into effect then on July 1st of this year. A lot of work still to do, and appreciate everybody's interest in it, and look forward to continuing the conversation. Have a great day.